Hi friends, hello, happy Thursday. Welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I'm Lisa Hetrick. I totally forgot to turn the timer on, at the beginning to let everybody know when it was gonna happen. I forgot. It happens. Okay, I'm super excited today to be here with you today. I have a really fun card project that I'm going to share with you today using my newest stamp set with Gina K Designs called Lovely Days. And we're going to have a little watercolor lesson. Go figure. That's what we do every week on this channel. Today we're going to talk about water to paint ratios. So the purpose of today is to do a fun card project, have a little chat, and also talk about when you're a little bit overwhelmed by color, not sure what to do. It can be very overwhelming when you sit down to do a card. Like, what card to use, what colors to, what color to use, what cardstock, what this, what that. I kind of wanted to eliminate all of those thoughts and kind of make it talk a little bit about water to paint ratios today and how you can maximize a very limited palette of colors and still create a really amazing project. And you do that through water to paint ratios. So we're going to talk about that today. And I see people popping in. Hello, Gloria, Catherine, Judith, me. Evidently, I made a comment. Maria, Susan, Karana, she's joining us from Indonesia. Hello. And Mary said it's geek out time. It's totally geek out time. It is watercolor nerd out time. We are jumping into the Craft Your Joy lab today, and we're gonna totally nerd out with watercolor. Hello, and Glorimar Wilson. Hello. Okay. Anywho, let's get started, friends. Okay, friends, we are just gonna have some fun. So let's head on down to the down camera. But before I do, if you have a question along the way during this live, just pop question in the chat. My questions are over there. I will have the down camera up and I will also have my face up. So I'll be talking to you and showing you things at the same time. I see some new friends with us today. So I'm kind of taking a moment to explain a few things. And I see some friends who are with us all the time. So that's exciting too. Okay. Let's go ahead to the down camera. And I also wanted to mention that all of the supplies I'm using are linked below in the description. So I don't spend a ton of time going through, I'm using this, I'm using that. I talk about it along the way. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get going. All right, I got to take these off because I can't see. All right, here is the card project that we are going to make today. And friends, finally, in Maryland, the temperature has flipped the switch and we're getting these really nice, beautiful, sunny 70-degree weather days. It kind of makes it feel a little fallish. Some leaves are starting to turn. So I wanted to have some fun with a limited color palette, these 3 colors, and do a really fun fallish kind of card. So this is what I'm hoping we're going to achieve today, and I'm going to walk you through how we're going to do that. But let's get started first on our watercolor nerd out lesson, talking about water to paint ratios. Now, I have talked about this on this channel before, but every single time we go live, we have new friends, right? New friends joining us. And water to paint ratios is one of those things that with practice in your paper crafting and watercolor painting, things start to change. Now, what do I mean by water to paint ratios? Real simple. When I'm using a color, this color right here is called Permanent Rose. I can change the value of that color simply by adding water. So if I use that color at 100%, little bit of water, whole lot of pigment, I call that the whole milk. It's full strength. I get the most intense value of that color. If I add a little bit of water to that pigment, and I call this the 2% milk, Now, remember, you can get all kinds of values in between, and we're going to do that. I'm going to do a little test. If I add more water, that should be more water, not less water. I need to fix that. Let's fix that right now. I've been showing that graphic forever. More water with the pigment. So more water with the paint, you get like a 2% milk consistency. You know how 2% milk is? It's kind of, it's not whole. It's got some water in it, right? You get a value, a stronger value than you would here on your first layer. But that could kind of look a little bit like this. So you can see where we've had our full strength value of color here. Not a lot of water, ton of pigment. Added some more water to that. I get a whole different value of that color. Add even more water to it. And I start to get that skim milk layer, right? A skim milk layer. So I can take one color, you can take one color of paint and get a range of values of that color going from dark to light simply by adding water. Now, how is this useful? Like, what is she rambling about, right? What is this? How is this useful, and why is she nerding out about it? Hello, Cheryl. It's useful because if you have a limited palette of watercolors, or if watercolors or your stamp pads, you want to work with just a limited palette of them, if you're feeling overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I got this color and this color, or I want to make this project pink, so I need like 7 different pinks to get the pink I want. No, you don't. You just add water to one, and you're able to change the values of that color and get different effects. So here's an example right here. I stamped this is the stamp that we're working with today. It's called Lovely Days. And here's the coordinating die set. I stamped the big honkin' flower. The cool thing about this flower is that you can make it any flower you want. The flowers in my stamp sets are always kind of graphic flowers, which make them very universal and like super fun to work with. So this one, we're using yellow today, but I did this one in pink. I just saw some people popping in. Hi, Karen. So I have the whole milk version of that color. You can see I've got a little bit of yellow in the middle of all three, but I've got I've painted out the strongest strength of that pigment. So very little water in the paint, a lot of pigment, and I get a really intense value of that permanent rose color, which I love permanent rose. Then I did another flower, and I added a little bit more water, tried to get it lighter than this. I get a different value of it. It changes the entire flower. Then I added even more water and really changed the strength of that value down to something very, very pale pink, like a little peony and color, or just something really, really light, and look at how that flower looked. So with one color, you could do this with your watercolor, or you could do it with your Gina K inks. You could always take an ink pad and put it down and do the same thing. Adding full strength, whole milk, skim milk, whole milk, 2% milk, skim milk. It all depends on how much water you add to the color. And you can get varying looks for your flowers with one color, which I think is super cool. Now, let's go ahead and kind of show you. I showed you here how you can get that value. Now, how does this all play out for our card projects? Here's how it all plays out for our card projects. We're going to come in, and I'm going to show you, we're going to use a small, very limited color palette today. And I'm also going to I'm throwing in a little bit of color mixing today for funsies. I know that many of you, we've talked about this on the channel, that there's interest in learning more about color mixing. So I'm thinking about ways to integrate color mixing into some tutorials into the fall. And this is one of them. So I'm really kind of working out that thought. And I think I might do some color mixing by color family. But I don't want to nerd out on that topic right now because we're focusing on some water to paint ratios and a little bit of color mixing because I'm adding that in. So I have these 3 colors here. This is a yellow, a green, and a black. Okay. So you could do this if you have lovely days in your stash or something like it, or anything in your stash. You can do these technique with the products that you have on hand. So here's the yellow. This is more of like, in watercolor world, this is more of like an Indian yellow. I'm going to show you the brand of watercolors I'm using. These are Tonic. This is new. This was an impulse buy for me. Hi, Gloria. Oh, Gloria's saying hi to Karen. This was a total impulse buy for me. And I actually posted this on Instagram last week. So one of my favorite art supply stores that is a small business is in St. Louis. It's called St. Louis Art Supply. They have a lot of watercolors and some really unique products. And I just really enjoy supporting small businesses, local and otherwise, across the country. And they started about a year ago or so, they started manufacturing their own watercolors. They came out with this Optimus line of liquid, kind of inky watercolory like colors. And then they came out with these, the Tonics. Now, they came out with this beginning line of, this is 7, 8, I think I have 9 colors. I got them all. But what got me, friends? Do I need more watercolors? Absolutely not. I have so many watercolors and I've shared so many different brands. But what I really, really liked about them is that they come in these porcelain pots. So it was literally an impulse buy because I wanted these porcelain pots. But look at all that paint. Also, this paint's going to last forever. And the paints are amazing. So I'm not an affiliate. I linked that company down below in the description so that you can go check them out on your own. But I am not an affiliate for them. I just really enjoy every product I've ever purchased from them. And I've gotten a lot of paints from them. And we're going to use them today. So their colors, the colors we're using, they call this Signal Yellow. It's PY65, sort of like an Indian yellow. It's a warm yellow. I've got green. This is phthalo green, which I have that box right here. Let me grab it. This is a phthalo green, and I've talked about phthalos. They call it phthalo evergreen. I really, really like this color. And I've got a carbon black. So again, yellow, green, black. That's what we're working with right now. Let me just toss these over to the side so that we can move on and kind of talk about it. So those are the 3 colors that I used in this card that we're going to make today. So let's go ahead and get started. We're also going to do a little bit of color mixing, and I'm going to come back to that. Karen said, Lisa, we can never have too many. Karen, I think I have too many. I do, but I love them all. I love them all. So anyway, let's go ahead and apply our water to paint ratios to our card project. Now, the first thing I'm going to share is I'm using some Kraft cardstock, Gina K Kraft cardstock. That's what I'm using today. It's fall. I'm bringing out the Kraft cardstock. I'm getting ready to, I'll talk about that later. Talk about the next release and some things that I'm getting ready to do. Okay. I've got some watercolor paper where I have pre-stamped some things. I'm using Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor. Friends, I thought I ran out, and I'm literally down to this last packet. And you could tell that I've had this for a while because this is the old packaging. And I was freaking out yesterday because I'm like, oh, where's my Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor? I need to get some more. And I found that in my stash. So, whew. Okay, I'm using the picture from Lovely Days, but I've stamped the picture off the edge of the card. And the reason I've done that is because we're going to add some visual interest to our design, just kind of going this way. And because we're going to be doing so much layering over top, you're really not going to see this part. We're going to be focusing our florals right here. but you can tell that that little jar is underneath it, that pitcher. So we're going to start with our water to paint ratios, and I'm going to break this out starting with the yellow. We're going to do some yellow on the pitcher. So I've got this, I've got some water here. Let's get going. I want to clean this up a little bit because I've got a little bit of green in here, but look at the juicy, juicy color. Let's move my card here, put that over there, and then let's get going. So this, like most watercolors, activate really, really well, really, really quickly just by adding water. So I'm going to get a really good concentration of that color, get a lot of pigment on my glass mat here. Okay. Now, when you start painting your project with a lot of pigment and not a lot of water, you can get the effects of a really opaque watercolor. My husband just popped in. Hi, hun. He just said, I'm here to see Dash, which is the cat, and he's behind the computer. He may or may not show up. So, kind of funny. Hello, honeydew. Nice to see you. So, okay. We're going to start painting the pot. I'm going to do a graduation of color from bottom to top here, and we're going to do a little bit of those water to paint ratios. Going to do really, really heavy whole milk concentration value of the yellow. So doing that, the paper is wet. I mean, the paper's dry. The brush is wet. I've got a lot of pigment. You can see I'm loading up a lot of pigment on the brush. And then I'm just going to start applying my color. And you can see that there's a lot of opacity here. And I can water this down if I want to, but I really do want a very nice, thick, kind of heavy wash of this color. So I'm just going to go back and forth with this and add a little bit of color here. And then let it dry. Now, if you are doing this technique and I've got this heavy concentration of color and I want to add more, like glazing and layering, we've talked about that, I would just let this dry and I would add some more. And we're probably going to do that. But now I want to take that same color and go up the pitcher. And I want a little bit, I want this next level of layers. We've got our black lines here that are part of the picture, part of the design. You can always go over them. I kind of like the heaviness of them, so I'm good with it. But I could go over it with a little bit of the carbon black or a pen. Because I did stamp this with Obsidian amalgam right here. The color, the watercolor and the water touching it is not going to move, okay? Obsidian is my favorite. Jet Black is another one of my favorite amalgams. Love using this stamp ink for watercoloring. All right, we can start to see this drying. It's a pretty intense value of this color. It's at that 100% saturation, saturation of color, whole milk. So Gloria just said, did you say you use the amalgam ink to watercolor? Yes, I absolutely do. So you can see that I've kind of touched this many times. I've used the amalgam ink and it won't bleed, okay, when you use your watercolor. Oops, let's get this up. Got a little mess here. And I ended up getting a little bit of color there. And I'm not going to worry about that too much because we're going to be adding some background color. Where would we be without me making a little bit of a mess? All right, I've got that. I'm going to switch brushes in just a minute, but first I'm going to get a little bit more of this color, of this pigment down onto my glass mat here. So you can see I've got a good big honking amount of that color there. Mary just said, it's a gorgeous day in India today in Indiana. She's got the windows open. I had the windows open too. I just closed them because there is a massively loud cricket right outside that window. And has anybody ever, like, I love the sound of crickets, but one that just constantly honks, then it's just too loud. So I closed the window. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I've changed to a smaller brush. This is a number 2 because we're going to put in some of the, go through some of the lines here. Now it's not going to matter. Look, I'm going over that black and it's not moving. But I want to add, I'm going to pull some of this color out. I've got a lot of color, but I want to add more water. So I'm just taking my brush and dipping in some water. And I'm just going to take this little piece right here and just kind of do a little test. All right, I kind of like that. I've got a little bit, I'm going to pull a little bit more. I've got a little bit more of a in-between whole milk, in-between 2% is what I'm going for. So that's a little bit lighter than I want it to be. So let's add a little bit more pigment to it. You can see I'm just dragging that pigment over into the water. There we go. That's what I want right there. So look at all those different values that I was able to create with that color just by adding water. So we're going to go ahead in here and I'm just painting it straight across. I want to pick up a little bit more of this. Paint it straight across. So we know this is dark. This is getting a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to add even more water and really water this down. So this warm yellow, this pigment is fantastic. When you are working with mixing colors, you have a warm yellow and a cool yellow. So in this particular set, you can see permanent yellow is the warm, cool yellow, signal yellow is the warm. But when you add water to this, I can really kind of bring that value down of that color to be a really nice wash of yellow. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. That's a little washy. Let's add a little less water. That's kind of the value I'm going for, since that's my medium and that's the next value that I want to go for. So I'm just going to go ahead and like paint that in right here. And it is definitely a lighter wash. Let's paint, I'm going to paint it in the top here. Even though in our final card, the flowers are going to cover it. But right now you're going to be able to see that graduation of color. From dark to medium to light. And I would almost say that that medium there could even be a little more medium. So let's just add just a smidge there. Clean off my brush and drag that color across. Now notice how I'm going across the black here and it's not moving. So Gloria, yes, that amalgam is, even if you just have one amalgam, like Gina has a bunch of amalgams. I can't remember how many, and I have them all. But if you're looking for that really good solid black, and I use these amalgams on all papers, but this amalgam Obsidian is amazing black on watercolor paper. So if you're using it with your stamping inks, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, now we're going to set this aside and let this dry. So you can see that graduation of color there. Now we're going to bring in the sunflower piece and the little leafery pieces. Here we're going to do a little, there's going to be a little bit of color mixing, but each one of these petals we're going to do something different. So I'm going to show you the different water to paint ratios in one stamp. Instead of doing the entire flower in one dark layer, or medium layer, or light layer, we're going to do each petal a little bit different. So this is key. This is really one way that you can take one color and by adding water, a little more, a little less, you can paint each petal of the flower a different value, and you're using one color, but you can add a whole lot of visual interest to your card project, to that stamp. So super simple and easy. Okay, I'm going to come in. I am going to continue to use this smaller brush because our stamps aren't always like super big. We don't have a big honking flower here, right? we're using a smaller flower. I'm going to take my bigger brush first though and get some more of our yellow. I'm going to add a big concentration of yellow at the top and have like a middle and then a really light wash. So this is a really super simple way. One color. Ah, just love this. Love it, love it, love it. Bring some of that pigment into this water right here. And then leave my lightest value right there. Okay. All right. Now let's get started. I'm going to get started with we're doing wet into dry. The paper is dry. My brush is wet. The pigment is wet. We've added water. You can do this technique, wet into wet, similarly. However, I am going to do it this way so that you understand how you can take one color and change the value of it simply by adding water. Okay, Judy just shared, amalgam ink takes longer to dry than dye ink. It does need to be stamped ahead. I find even with heat setting it needs time. That's interesting, Judy, because, and it could be climate related, maybe? I'm not sure. It does take a little bit time to dry when I'm using it on papers that aren't watercolor paper. So if I am using it on my Gina K white or another white, it takes just a little smidge to dry before I want to hit it with any other color or Copic markers. Now with watercolor paper, when I'm using it with this 100% cotton paper, I find that I need to double or triple stamp it to get a good solid black. But because this paper is so thirsty, it kind of takes that color and it starts to embed it into the fibers of the watercolor paper. So I have to hit it a couple times. So that's kind of interesting. I'd love to know if anybody else has used the amalgam ink and had a similar experience. I feel like maybe it's because my internal temperature is running hot lately with hot flashes. I'm constantly running fans everywhere. Everything seems to dry too quick in all of my projects. So kind of fun. All right, I'm going to come in here to these petals and I'm literally just coming in and straight up painting them. And I'm just going to do some random petals around the flower. Pick up now. It's going to dry pretty quickly and pretty thick. So you can see I'm not adding water. It's just a very small amount of water, just enough to get the pigment to flow. This isn't a washy-washy technique. This is a really water to paint ratios. Once you start working and playing around with this a little bit more, it really does hone your skills, and it's a very controlled way to paint. Now, most of the time I'm doing super washy, splashy kind of watercolor techniques, which are my favorite, and we are going to do one in today's card, but I hope that this water to paint ratio technique kind of gives you something to think about, how you can work with a very limited palette, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed by color. You can work with a very limited palette and really get some nice color effects with your projects. All right, I'm going to do one more. Then we're going to move to our 2% milk value. I'm kind of digging that. Now, you could paint the whole entire flower this way, and it would be beautiful, right? It would have this kind of look as this first flower right here. It would also kind of be thick and a little bit opaque. You can see there's not a lot of transparency in some of that, and that would be beautiful. But we're going to go ahead and prove out our water to paint ratios here. All right, I'm cleaning off my brush. And, oh, Karen has a really great comment. In my area, Karen, you're in Texas, right? Texas, I think. In my area, high humidity. I do have to let it dry on Gina K Designs papers for a bit. So I'm really curious, Judy, what your climate is like. On watercolor paper, it dries pretty quickly. You're right. Like Lisa said, the watercolor paper is super thirsty. You're right. That's so interesting. I love that. And I know we have like friends that have popped into this chat, into these online tutorials I do here. Yep, Southern East Texas. I was right. Karen is in Texas. Some folks, some people that live in Arizona, and that is a whole like dry, arid kind of climate. So it's interesting how our one product can change based on climate. I find that fascinating. Okay, now we're going to come in. I've got a nice little here, this version of my color, 100% milk. Let's see if this is giving me that medium value that I want. Oh, it is right there. Digging it. I feel like maybe just a little more pigment. Yeah, love it. Okay, let's go in. Now I'm going to come in and just kind of paint a little bit more. I've got a lot of paint on there. Whoosh. So you can see it's a little bit wetter. Let's come in. See if I can come in a little tighter here. Come on, camera. Get a little smoothie. There we go. Come in a little tighter and see where we are with that. So I've got a little bit lighter. Let's come in and just start painting. I have less pigment on my brush. You can see that there's more water, and we're getting a variation between our light value, medium value, and darker value of color right there. This is going to take a very minimum amount of pigment on the brush. Oh, I'm loving this, digging it, and loving this fall look. Okay, let's grab a little bit right there. Let's paint this one. And then let's go in. I think I'm going to paint that one right there. We are going to die cut this flower out too, so no worries. All right, I'm digging that. So right away you can see the darker value, that whole milk consistency, and then our 2% milk consistency. Or coconut milk consistency would be a lot like skim. This might be a little bit more like an oat milk consistency for our plant-based milk drinkers. Okay, now let's go in. I'm a plant-based milk drinker. Let's go in with our lightest value of color, and that's right here. Let me test it first and see if I'm getting a light enough value. I think I am. I want to add a little bit more water. I'm just dipping some water in here and just kind of playing along. Now look at all the different values of color I've gotten from this paint. I'm going to put a little bit of the dark one right up there so that you can see all the different values, and I'm just noodling around with pigment and water. I think that's just fascinating and super fun. Okay, clean off my brush, kind of come in, and then let's go in. Now my brush is wet, very little pigment, paper is dry, whole lot going on here. Now I'm going to start painting that in. There is going to be so much on the brush. There's quite a bit on the brush. I can probably paint 2 petals at a time. And I'm getting that lightest value of that yellow right here. There we go. And just add a little bit of color right there. Well, I'm kind of digging all that. Now we're going to let it dry. And then we're going to come back. After it dries, we're going to come back and see if we want to add some color. And that would be layering or glazing. And that means I've added this first layer of color on here. And I can go back and intensify the values of those colors by adding more on top. And I may or may not do that. Now, let's go ahead and do a little bit of color mixing. So I have this black, this carbon black. Another great color would be burnt sienna. Anything that's like in your watercolor palette that's a brown or a black. I want to paint the inside of this sunflower. So I'm going to, let me change brushes. I'm going to change to a number 6. I'm going to do a little bit of color mixing. Now these two colors, and I'm pretty sure the carbon black. Let me just double check the carbon black. Their pigment, yeah, it's PBK 7. So the cool thing about this watercolor set is that they're all single pigments. So when you're working with watercolor, single pigments are really ideal when you want to mix them together. Now, convenience colors are colors that have like multiple pigments in them to make this really cool color. So one better than the other? No. I always say no, there's no difference. One isn't better than the other. It's all about preference. So when I'm doing color mixing though, and intentionally doing color mixing and experimenting, I like to use colors that have one pigment. If I use a color that has multiple pigments, it's going to vary my results in a good way sometimes, or I create mud. One or the other. So that's the nerd out part. That's the really, really fun part of watercolor, is that you can experiment so much with what you have in your limited palette and create lots of different colors. I love it. All right, we're going to take a little bit of this yellow. I'm just obsessed with these little porcelain pots. I'm going to take some of this yellow and put it down here. I've got a nice strength, full strength, like a whole milk of that. Oh, is this the right color? Yep, that's the black. Let me just add, I'm going to drop a little black in, clean off my brush, and then just start mixing that in a little bit because that carbon black is an intense color. But when I mix it together, look at this. I get that really interesting brownish, greenish color. And I really want that kind of a hue of that color in the center there. It's not black anymore. So mixing those two together. So I took this yellow, took this black, and I'm able to get this like brown, green, kind of like dirt, like a natural color. Digging it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take that I mixed up, and I'm just going to paint it in here. Brush is wet, paper is dry, wet into dry. I'm kind of choked up on the brush a little bit here on the ferrule of the brush, just because I want to get some really nice control. I'm going to focus a really intense value of that color. You can see there's a lot of pigment there. Clean off my brush, come in with a clean brush, and just kind of touch the edge of that color and use what's there and draw it out to the outer edge here. So this is another way with your wet into dry technique to add a variation of value with your color. And this is, you've seen me do this many, many, many times. So see how I'm just kind of feathering this out and pulling what's here across. I've got a little bit of a hard line there. I'm just kind of feathering it out, using what's here, pulling it across and getting that value of color. Love that! Love that color mix too. So super simple. Again, we're working with 3 colors to create this fun value. Fun mix of colors. Okay. All right. Oh, Catherine just said lovely, very clear example of what you're talking about. Good. I hope that everything I'm sharing, we definitely nerd out, friends. We are definitely in a nerd out phase of our tutorial here, but I'm trying to give it to you in the context of eventually making something, right? But I like to focus on techniques versus the anatomy of making the card. Mary just said, that's funny. I didn't know that, Mary. You've influenced Gina K. She's now saying, I'm digging it. Oh, that's so fun. Gloria just shared, watercolor is always full of discoveries. It's part of the fun. That's why I love it so much. Or other mediums that give you watercolor effects, because you can keep playing and playing and playing with them, and you get all different kinds of effects. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my phthalo green. And phthalo green and phthalo blue are special, special colors to me. And this is why they are intense. They are what you would call a high chroma color, meaning they are just so bright and beautiful. They also stain your paper, which makes it a little hard to work with them sometimes when you want to lift colors and you want to move them around. Like, look how bright and beautiful that color is. But what I love about the phthalo colors, phthalo blue, phthalo green, there's a red shade, there's a blue shade, there's all the shades. What I love about them is that they are really amazing color to mix with other colors. Now, we're going to start off with a little bit. I'm going to make a concentration of that phthalo. This is evergreen. They call it evergreen phthalo, but basically it's phthalo green. I'm going to take this phthalo green, and phthalo green is not really a natural green. It's not a green hue that you would see on your plants. It's a really high chroma bright green. So I want to warm it up a little bit. I'm going to take some of this yellow and drop it in and get myself a color mix. So there was our green. Here is me adding a little bit of yellow. I like it, but it's still kind of bright. So I want to add a little bit more. Might even go in here and just grab myself a big bit. Go in here a little bit more. And what I'm going for is more of a jelly bean green. Not quite there yet. I'm going for that green, that yellow green. So I'm adding a little bit more yellow. It's starting to get better. Starting to get better. But I need to add a little bit more. And see how much fun this is? You're just playing with two pigments and water. And I am keeping this consistency still pretty thick. But look, I've got that green that I want. And this is more of a jelly bean green. More of a grass, close to grass green in Gina K. Jelly bean green. More of a sap green color. You'll see the word sap green in mostly every watercolor brand that's out there. And I'm just going to go in and just paint a little bit of this color on my petals, on my leafery here. And you can see I've got a full strength of this color. I'm going to add some water to it and even water this down a little bit more to get that ratio that I'm going for. So cleaning off my brush, I wish I had a little bit of a smaller brush, but we're going to go with it. Cleaning off my brush, and it's got a little bit of water. I'm just going to start to feather this out a little bit and draw that color. Use the paint that's here and draw that out to the very edge of my leafery. So in doing so, I end up with some values from dark to light. And I'm still doing the wet into dry technique. So one of the reasons why people have shared with me that they don't really love the wet into wet technique, and that's what I call washy watercolor, and you've heard me say this many times. The reason why they don't love it is because it feels like you're a little bit out of control when you're painting. Because it is. I'm going to show you that because we're going to do washy. It feels a little out of control. I'm adding a little bit of color just to the tips, just to get a little bit of that dark to light happening. You can see that's happening here. If I want to bring back like this little tip right here, I feel like I need a little bit more. A little bit more. I'm kind of dropping that in there. Everything still feels a little bit wet here in my leafery, even though I'm doing wet into dry. So I'm just going to take my brush and lift back some of this color. Yes, Gloria, and to create my highlights. Gloria just shared great highlights. This is one way to create or bring back some highlights when you feel like you have an oversaturation of watercolor. You're just going to go in and just lift it up with a brush. I've got a clean brush here and just lift and pull some of that color up and away. Now, if I tried to do that with that full strength phthalo green, lifting is very, very difficult. Watch, I'm going to show you, adding a little bit of this color here. If I want to go, it's a staining color. So if I really want to go in here and I want to lift up and away and get back to the white of the paper, it's a lot harder. But because I've mixed it with, and I've added more water, and I brought the ratio of water to pigment down quite a bit, and those granules of pigment are just kind of separating, I'm able to do a little bit more lifting and a little less staining on the paper. Okay. Hello, Kathleen. She said, so happy to watch and learn again with you about watercolor and values of color. Yeah, I'm happy you're here. Okay. I know that I'm like hit like a severe nerd out phase. I've nerded out quite a bit with our water to paint ratios. Now let's go ahead and move to putting our card together and die cutting our pieces. I'm going to go ahead and just wet this a little bit and kind of clean up the pigment that I have here. I'm going to end up adding a little bit more, but I know me, as I start to build out this card, I'm going to end up getting it all in there and making a little bit of a mess. So let's just tidy that up a little bit. I might pull out just a smidge. Pull out our camera just a little bit here, because I'm going to bring in the die cutter, and I'm not going to die cut cam. I don't have a die cut cam today. My daughter is using my webcam, my extra webcam that I have. So I'm just going to bring in my Gina K Intercut, and let's do some die cutting. I'm obsessed with this Intercut. I absolutely love it. I feel like it's the machine I've waited my whole life for. You can see my cutting mat is already very well loved. And I feel like, as far as die cutting goes, and I have the magnetic plate too. Oh, I should have grabbed that. But we're going to do some simple die cutting. Now, I'm going to take these two pieces. Let's see if I can move this up so you guys can see a little bit more. There we go. And I've got the dies. I've got the coordinating die for the flower. And I have the coordinating die for the leafy piece. So let's just go ahead and grab those. And I'm just going to, oh, look at that. I got it right out of the gate. First shot. That's so wild. That never happens. Let's pop out a little bit. Let's go a little wider so you can see. I got it on the first shot. I'm going to tape this down. And I need to clean this machine because it's gotten a little bit dirty. Or not. I may or may not clean it. Now, I've got that new magnetic plate too, and I should have grabbed that. I forgot about that, so that you can just not have to do the tape. Sometimes I don't even do the tape. Here's my sandwich. This is, this is the cutting plate, so this is the platform. And this is why I like it, because I feel like this is a no-fail sandwich. I feel like this machine is like the one I've been looking for my whole life. Anyway, and it doesn't do that badonk. Anybody else have like a die cutting machine? And I love my Spellbinders machine. I love all the machines I've used. But when you go through and it pops out the other side, it made that badonk sound. This one doesn't do that. And I love it. And it's easy on my hands and my wrists. Friends, I have been a graphic designer for 30 years. 30 plus years. And I have some wrist issues. So it's inevitable. I've been a designer and illustrator for a really long time. So I do have some wrist issues. And my daughter just texted me. She's at work. So I'll have to check that one out. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and run this through. And we've got our little die cut piece. I'm just going to pop that through and then roll that back. And get that piece. I could, if you don't have the dies, no worries. You could always just hand cut these pieces out. Let's go ahead and put that tape back. We'll use that for next time. And the other thing I love about this machine is that it doesn't roll off the table while you're using it. Because when you put the platform down, it stays. And that's just brilliant. Okay. let's go ahead in to our base piece. And we're going to talk about, let me just answer this text. Are you live? Yes, I am live. Yippers. Live. Remember, all of my lives come with a little bit of life, right? A little bit of life activity happening. All right, we're going to vary some contrast with this card. We spent a lot of time doing different values of color with the yellow in here and here, and different values of the green. Now, I want to create a background where we have a little bit more grounding contrast. So in doing so, how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use Slate, Gina K Slate, and I'm going to stamp the flower again, just kind of like over here, and we're just going to stamp one over here. And I'm not worrying too much about what's happening because I am going to cover it. Let's go ahead in a little bit tighter here because we kind of zoomed out. I am going to be covering it, but I'm also going to be creating a washy, watercolory background. And again, sharing something a little bit different with the values of this yellow. So we're using that same yellow, and we're using Slate stamping ink. I've got a really nice thick value of this color. Look how super juicy that yellow is. But I don't really want it to be that super juicy. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be coming in here with a little bit of water, and you can see that the black, some of you may be gasping. So the black from the slate is coming out because that particular ink is a water-based ink. So we can make it work like a watercolor. So we're doing a little washy. Then I'm going to drop in some of this yellow. And some of you might be gasping and saying, oh my gosh, she just ruined it. Nope. We're going to work with what's here. You can see I'm just dancing my brush around, and it feels like it's a little bit loud and proud. But I'm going to end up taking some of this away. I'm adding a lot more water. I'm going to come all the way down, adding a ton of water here. Super washy. And coming across here. Okay. I'm going to go in, and then I'm going to take my paper towel and just kind of dry that out a little bit. So there we go. Loving that. Then we'll go ahead and heat it. Just kind of see where we are. We're just drying it. But we've got that. We've got that color bleeding and blending a little bit. Glormar just said not ruined. It's fantastic. Okay, friends. I have somebody at the door that I need to let in. So I'm going to take... It's a wild day here today. I'm going to take my face off. I'm going to leave you with this. And then I'm also just going to be right back. Okay, friends, I'm back. All right, so this had a little bit of time to dry, and I'm kind of really liking the way that looks. It's got that fall vibe to it. It's got some really interesting colors. We mixed the slate. So with the gray ink, when I added water to it, that color started to break down and some of the blues were coming through. So it's super fun. All right, I'm liking the way this looks. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit more. Going to come in and add another layer of color over top of that 100% value of yellow that I have here in the pot. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of Honey Mustard Gina K inks. Now, in the stamp set, I have a pattern right here that fits right into the picture. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that in. Oops. The cat just kicked my microphone. It's a wild day here in the studio. Hopefully, he just also walked across. All right, I'm going to stamp this in, and that pattern fits in that space perfectly, and you get that nice over-stamped honey mustard color, which is a beautiful color. It's got yellow in it. It's an even warmer yellow than this color. So, love that. All right, now we're just going to go ahead and start assembling the card. Super, super fun. I've got my Gina K glue. You know what? You know what I brought in today? Let's see. If I had some trouble with the glue, and because I'm using watercolor paper, I found my Gina K tape runner. And friends, I never use tape runners because I over tape. You can see me over taping right now. But I'm going to use the tape runner today. All right, let's go ahead and take this out. Karen just said, left the room and came back to your beautiful creating. Yes, I did. Hopefully I wasn't gone too long. It's hard to tell. With this 20-second delay, you never know like what that looks like to you. Okay, here we go. All right, loving the way this looks. We've got that value of a more opaque color to a lighter color to an even lighter value of that color. So used a very, very limited palette here, but look at the contrast of colors that we have here. So it feels a lot less overwhelming when you're creating with a smaller palette. Sometimes we can get like completely overwhelmed. I've got some Gina K foam squares by the amount of products we have, or the amount of colors we have, or the amount of all the things we have. This is one way to kind of jumpstart your creativity and jump in just by using a smaller amount of colors or a limited palette. All right, here's my sunflower. I'm just going to kind of flip this around and pop it down to see in a way that is pleasing to the eye. So look at that color contrast that we got going there. Digging it. All right, now I've got the two pieces of leafery. Just going to pop some foam squares behind it and then go for it. We're going to lay this down. Karen says, I so love this. Oh, good. So good. Just going to pop one right here. And I'm going to pop another one like right here just to kind of cover up that little bit of an edge. So you can see that the design of this card is concentrated mainly with our eye kind of heading down in this direction, because we're going to put our sentiment here, and that's going to help ground. So we're coming down and across. Those are just like the psychological visual cues. I think I want this to go this way. I think I want that to go this way. Gloria just shared, what is the reason that you open the card to place the card front? Aha! This just because my brain kind of works that way. Like I know that this is the back, this is the front. I'm kind of eyeballing exactly where I want to put that layer. So a lot of times I'll open it so that my brain can see the whole piece. I hope that matters. I hope that makes sense. Also, I don't love it when I lay this way and I try to put something and eyeball it, because it flips. It floppity flips up, and that for some reason affects me. All right, this is kind of leaning over the edge of the card a little bit, and I like that for this card. But if you make this and you're mailing it, you're going to have to push that little piece of leafery in so that it'll fit in the envelope. Okay, love it. Now, a little bit of a mashup with our sentiment here. We're going to grab, this is Friendship Blooms. This is my stamp set with Gina K called Friendship Blooms. And I really like this sentiment. Friendship is the flower that blooms all season. So we're going to use that sentiment. And we're going to just go ahead and stamp that in. I'm thinking maybe right there. I think it's going to have to go down here. And I'm going to use Obsidian. You could use a Misty, which I have around here somewhere. You could use a Misty, but I'm going to go rogue and just do this once and just kind of be a little bit heavy-handed and pop it down and maybe rock it just a little bit. And the reason why is that even though this is a really dark black ink, Obsidian, I'm using it on the watercolor paper, which is a super thirsty paper. So to get a really intense black, you may want to use your Misty. Or it kind of came out the way I wanted it. I like it. I'm digging it. Okay, let's move on. Loving this. So look at that very limited color palette that we were using, that we used today, and how we were able to stretch those color combinations, get a really nice card with that looks like it's got a lot going on, right? It's got a lot of personality with color, but we only used 3 colors, mixed some colors together to get different values, different hues of those colors, used water to get different values of the yellow, and kind of kept it pretty simple, clean and simple, but it looks like it's got a lot going on, which I kind of like. All right, I've got these gems. We're going to be a little bit gem challenged, I think. Let's see if I can get my glue going. I was cleaned off my glue, and I've got I think I just want a little tiny bit going up, just to kind of reinforce that coming down across the card and then coming across this way. Have you ever heard in design, you may have heard this from other card makers. I know you probably, if you watch Kathy Z at all, I know you've heard it from her. So in graphic design, when we're designing page layouts and we're designing things, there's this thing called the Z principle in design. So you're focusing your headline across the top, you're helping your audience go down the page with their copy, and then they come across and they kind of end here with their call to action. So that's one of the Z principles, Z theory principles in graphic design for page layout. Now in cards, I've used this concept in that same way, except I'm having you go down and across, right? We're kind of skipping the whole Z. We're just going boop, boop. And it's just something to think about. When you're feeling like your card project doesn't have some cohesion or some feeling like things are coming together, think of these things and it can kind of help you create something that's pleasing for you and brings you joy. Okay, friends, holy smokes. So we made this card in like an hour. So a little bit over an hour, even with all of the nerding out, even with like the texting and the answering of the door. So how fun is that? How fun is that? Mary just shared, this is so cool. Unbelievable how many different tones you created. Yes, look at all the different values of color that we created just with that one color. Look, come back as this is dried, and you can see all the different values of the yellows that we played with. Super fun. That pink again. Super, super cool. Okay. Betty just shared the Z is a new concept for me. Oh, very cool. The Z theory. Maybe I'll nerd out a little bit more about design stuff. I tend to nerd out about design theory in almost every video that we're doing these techniques. So super, super fun. Okay, friends. Let's get my double head out. Thanks so much for joining me today. I love coming to you live, and also, you know, that you see and hear a lot of life stuff going on around me, which is kind of fun too. And I just thank you for your patience, because a lot of that will continue to happen because my studio door is open and people walk in and out all the time. So, okay, friends, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you got a lot out of today's tutorial. It was really fun coming in. I feel so much energy from all of you today. Yeah, it's just been great. And I hope that you really did get some really good foundational watercolor techniques about limited palette. I've had people ask me questions and say to me that they feel kind of overwhelmed by color, even their inks, and like where to start. So I was hoping that this would help you jumpstart that creativity, small limited palette, and how you can get different values of those colors with just one color or two or three. Thanks so much. Okay, friends, couple housekeeping things real quick. Next Tuesday, September 10th, my brand new holiday stamp set will be coming out with Gina K Designs. I am so excited about this stamp set. I know I say that about every stamp set, but I'm so excited about this stamp set. I've not done anything like this before. So it's holiday. It's holiday, and this is only the second holiday stamp set I've ever illustrated for Gina K. And second is that it's something a little bit different for me and you, and I think you're going to love it because I'm so excited about it. So that's next Tuesday. So I will be back next week with a brand new tutorial again on Thursday with the new holiday stamp set. And friends, this stamp set, so much fun watercolor techniques that we're going to do together. So much fun. Okay. If you're interested, my email, if you want to get on my email list, that information is down below in the description. I also have a free community. We've got lots of new friends today that have joined us and lots of new friends to watercolor. I have a free community in my classroom at craftyourjoy.com. That's also listed down below. I'm also running a 50% off sale, my signature watercolor class, if you're interested in that. That's listed down below. And yeah, I'd love to have you in my community. I also have a free watercolor class over there. So check that out. Check out if you're interested in taking your watercolor techniques to another level besides what you see here on YouTube and Facebook. Take a peek at my classroom at craftyourjoy.com. Okay, friends. I am so excited. It's been such a great day. I'm going to be making some more projects this afternoon for the release next week. Okay, friends, I'll see you next week. And I'm sending you into the weekend to craft your joy. I hope you have a really great weekend. Enjoy the weather, and I'll see you next week. Bye now.